not surprising when you find out that shortcuts were taken, or more likely stuff is stolen, because let's be fair, that is a lot of corporate MO.
Well, it also like just goes to show like what honestly the future of this technology is, whereas what we think it is. Like I was talking about this with somebody the other day. It's like it generates information. So if you're an artist, a creative person, or you're in a certain industry and field, like for example, if you're an audio engineer, right? Having AI at your fingertips is really great, because if you need to try different outcomes, or see how different things could work, or maybe like the possible potential of something, it's a lot easier using AI than actual physical practice and trial and error.
Right. Yeah, I get it. Modeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
ingenious human engineering.
Yeah, but of course, it's like then there is the problem that the problem. It feels a bit weird to say this at this point, but just the fact is that it's scraping from the dialogues that people have been putting online, talking about various things, talking about various problems and solutions and that sort of thing. And I for one, it's like when I have something that I need to look up now, I'll first ask one of the generative AIs, probably ChatGPT, and then only later will I actually say, in a worst case scenario, will I actually post if I have a question that I need an answer to that I cannot solve. And the fact is in the meantime, that's just kind of like all happened silently. I suppose I'm going a roundabout way of saying it's like this is feeding off existing material, but like there's less material being made as a result. So slowly it'll just keep feeding off the same kind of limited amount of like information, like discourse or whatever there is out there. And you just feel like, well, isn't it just going to become really homogenous, like repetitive, singular, and also really like a snapshot of a particular time? I don't know. I just don't know. But these things make me wonder.
Well, something, it also kind of, look, I'm not old enough to remember, when the internet first hit consumers, specifically back in 94, 95. But think about how people were thinking about computers back then. When I was growing up, the best type of computer was a fucking Dell Inspiron that weighed like 59 pounds and had dial-up. Like, it would take you 10 minutes to download like 300 kilobytes, of information. It was insane. And people were freaking the fuck out. Like, this was going to like take away people's jobs. The world was going to end in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And it's 2024 and the internet didn't kill us. In a way.
No, you're right. There's a lot of doomsaying around any technology, right? Any new technology, there's a lot of people who will just default to, this is it, we're done. Species had a good run, but dinosaurs, they were first, now as humans. Like, I get it. And it's kind of one of those things that it's a combination of, like, on the one hand, yeah, you're right. There's always so much of a kind of panic and furor about these, like anything new that is a bit unknown and also that like moves quickly like this has. But simultaneously, it's always there's always this part of you that's like, yeah, but everything was fine before. Which is exactly the same logic that kind of happened with like swine flu, bird flu, and then boom, COVID-19. And everything did change a little bit for a while. So I guess, I don't know. I mean, I think in my kind of privileged situation, my choice is to just kind of ignore it mostly and see what happens.
I try to always take, the aspect of trying to see, for example, like the positive view. And even though it's science fiction, this is one thing I've always loved about like Gene Roddenberry, where with even the series of Star Trek, it's a very like, it's not a positive, but it's a little bit more of like, a possibility, a realistic possibility of what our future could potentially look like.
Right.
And obviously they didn't think of computers the way we think of computers today, but think about it. How do they respond to computers in Star Trek?
Yeah.
It's all in their head. It's interactive, right? So you can even see like in that perspective of a futuristic, we're traveling in space, we don't really need to have computers like we have now.
Yeah,
there's no need.
I get your point. Yeah, we don't have to think about it like in the same way, in the same limiting way, I guess. Actually, it's there's so much more that can be done. Yeah, it's true. It's and yeah, it's a good example. The whole Star Trek kind of optimism and moral integrity in everything that happens. And yeah, you know what? I genuinely want to believe that like things are gonna be okay. But I also kind of know that like most of these things are out of my control and power.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do like the little things that I can to make sure that I'm like, I'm not killing people on a daily basis. But beyond that, I'm a little bit like, man, I could like lose sleep worrying about stuff which genuinely I can't do anything about.
And also to emphasize on your point, it's where we live in a really incredible time. I mean, besides just like the advancement of technology and just the things that are at our fingertips, it's also a really great time to be like a creative person, because you want to make your own music, go for it. You want to be a comic. You know how easy it is to be a comedian these days?
Yeah.
It's so fucking stupid. Like I live out here in South Florida. There's tons of clubs.
Yeah.
You just go to their website or you send them a quick DM. You're like, hey, do you got to open up mic? Do you have any open spots or whatever?
That's it.
It's simple.
But I tell you something, actually, since we've taken that segue into stand-up, because this is one thing which I find interesting, especially as someone who teaches it as well, is that when I was starting out, it was, the idea of doing a stand-up comedy course before doing your first set was quite an alien thing, like it was more unusual. It was something which maybe some people would do, but, most people would say, what are you doing? There's no barrier to this. You literally... anyone, as you said, can DM whoever it is running whatever open mic, and then you get your spot, and you find out how it goes. You learn something from it. But I feel like more so than ever before, and it's only getting more and more popular, people are out there looking for stand-up comedy courses. The demand is like much huger in the like even post-pandemic. It's huge, but like it is like. There's so many people who seem to just think that this is like the natural progression that you go into this. And I get like that certain personality types, I get it, right? There's definitely some people who, I mean, like me, I started doing one. That's how I started out. I'm, more naturally introverted. So that just felt like a safer space, a way that I felt like I could, I don't know, make my first mistakes at least more privately before kind of going into the first one. But like I remember even teaching like one group, they went up to, you do 8 weeks of learning, then they do their first show. And after only 3 open mics, some of the people within that were then looking for the next course. And I'm like, what is this mentality of like looking for a course for something which you just need to do it and do it again and again and again? There is no substitute for this. And I'm fascinated, but also a little confused as to why there are just so many more people now who just want the comfort of a course before they do this.
Well, the interesting thing, though, is approaching comedy specifically with a course or even a class is a little bit different than, other forms of art, because a lot of what you're teaching it's in your court, because you can't tell somebody, oh, you have to do comedy like this.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work. I mean, because everybody develops comedy in their own way, but you kind of have to structure it in a way where you're like, saying you need to be confident so you feel comfortable doing your material, but also understanding like what material to use, and also at the same time being comfortable that you can bomb and have bad nights, but that use it to your advantage at the same time, and getting all those pieces together. And you're right. Like a lot of times people are like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I mean, and you're right that like there is, I mean, I think that's an important thing as well, is that you retain someone's identity, you retain someone's self. You can, I think there are genuinely some like writing techniques, performance techniques, stature, things like this, building your profile, your persona, that sort of thing is more generic. But the vast majority of it is absolutely, as you say, it is down to that person and finding out about themselves, really, about like how people sort of have snap judgments to them, what they find funny, what they find interesting, what works, what doesn't. And yeah, like with that, there is absolutely no substitute for stage time. They just got to get up and do it again and again and again. That's it. That everything else is kind of like a nice to have, but there is no substitute for just getting up and doing it.
No, there isn't. Like you need to have like a sense of confidence. And I think like this kind of goes into any form of art that you do. Like you need to feel strong about yourself, and you have to feel like confident. Like you're doing this because you want to do it.
Yeah.
Not because you're doing this as a job. Because if you're doing it as a job, find another, industry.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the right one.
Oh, hell no. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like, there's like certain professions where the reward, or is a lot more fraught compared to the risk of failure. And this is definitely one. There are a lot safer things you can go into where you can earn better money, you can have more security, you can.
But it's not as fun. It's not as fun. Come on.
Fun. No. But also, it's like, I don't know, like, it's like people should just do what they, like try things out like this. You might be the class clown when you were growing up, that sort of thing. Try things out, try new things. Don't limit yourself to what you will and won't do, just sort of discover things. I mean, I know this is a very sort of, I don't know, teenage mindset. It's supposed to be that thing of like teenage, early 20s. That's where you're discovering things. But I just think there's way too many people out there who think they've discovered themselves, but god damn, you haven't. Like, really, do we really like know things? What a statement. Do we really know things? But like, we are limited to we get into habits. We do like the same thing. We have the same sort of friendship circles. We have the same places that we live. We do the same sort of, we have these commitments, both social and like work and whatever it is. And before you know it, your like whole kind of time is blocked up with just the things that you do. And you don't like ever really question whether it's like the good things or the things that suit you, because that's the life you live. And, it's not easy to just say, actually, I'm going to try something totally different.
Yeah, it's also, it's also a mindset, because, you can, a lot of the times you can kind of get trapped into this this pit of where, either there's family restraints of, you have to be this way, you have to do this, or for example, you have a partner, that's kind of putting that pressure and stress on you as well. And it's it's being able to like realize, like, what do you want out of life? I mean, look, whatever you believe in, heaven or hell, I get that. But at the same time, like, you get one life, right? You get like one opportunity to make this worth your time. So do something about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like it's both liberating and terrifying, right? It's like, because you're always simultaneously like, yeah, I should do new things, but then you're also like, damn, I've wasted a lot of time. And it's, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes I get into ruts, for sure. I get into kind of repetition. I sort of, tend to find myself slowly getting a little bit more and more sort of, down about things, because I'm just kind of doing the same thing all the time. And eventually I kind of realize this, but it's always like a little while after it's happening. It's not like not like I'm so in tune with my own feelings that I go, okay, yes, Stephen, you are in a bad way. You need to change something. You need some novelty. You need some excitement. It's more like, I get 2 weeks into this. Everything is shit and everything is hard. Having a shower is hard. Getting up is hard, whatever it is. And then it's that moment I go, oh, wait, this is not how it always is. It's happened again. This happened again. I forgot. And then, you just kind of got to do something about it. You don't necessarily do it straight away, but it's like, it's just a cycle that just keeps happening. It doesn't matter if you know better; you're always going to mess up.
You are. It's also like, repetitive motion. That mundane feeling of not necessarily just doing the same things, but knowing you're doing the same things over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I found for me is that focusing on things that are important to me while I'm going through that, for example, like my career, as an artist, like, what I'm trying to get out of things, like why I'm doing this. We're all about the artist. That is the whole purpose of this podcast, period. And you have a really valuable tool. You can share this with artists, people that are creative, someone that can enjoy this podcast and really enjoy the experience of Lost in the Groove. So with that, let's jump back to today's episode, shall we? So I can get there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having like kind of like the bigger picture, because like, yeah, you don't know for sure what the future is going to be like, but if you stay in that rut, how are you supposed to grow? You're stuck.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It is so tough because there's always those points as well where you're like, there's a thing I'm doing and I know that there's going to be some time where it's hard and I'm not going to do it so well and I'm going to go through some bad times. I'm going to struggle. And then there's times where where you just feel a little bit like, okay, actually, maybe this thing that I'm doing, I'm just not good at it. And I need to stop doing it. I need to change. That balance between like knowing that you are doing something destructive or constructive and like knowing the times when you need to switch things up and you're actually making yourself unhappy, and the times where you need to just like persevere because this, it's hard and you got to keep trying and you got to, really commit to it. That's also a really hard thing. And that also changes as well, right? Because like you said before, it's like different things happen. You got different commitments in your life all around. There's just like this constant thing, like always, of just like, what am I spending my time doing? What am I focusing on? Am I doing the right thing? Do I even make sense anymore? Gets a bit, this got deep quick, huh?
No, but this is something that like, when you sit down with people, especially people that are, because when you're having a creative journey, if you want to have that respect in your life, there are those difficult conversations that a lot of the times people don't want to face. The fact that being a social media influencer is not a job. It's not. It's a really tough commitment that you have to spend a ton of time and research and figuring out like what you need to do, how you're going to put your content out, like how you're going to do. And it's the same thing with any type of field when you're dealing with something artistic. It's like, it's not necessarily knowing what you need to do, but it's understanding that in order for you to go from here to here, you're going to have to make some serious changes in order for it to work.
Yeah. It took me a while there to kind of like get where you were going with that, but I think I get it.
Sorry.
So, because no, it's cool. Because I mean, like honestly, I do. To me, like the social media side of things does feel like it's actual work, whether or not it's a job in a literal sense, because very few people can actually make a living from just content creation. That's a very small number, but I do know what you mean in the sense that like take the music industry in, I don't know, the 1970s. There was like, that's when money started to really pour in the lead to the 80s. And that's when you had like, you were selling albums for currency conversion, I don't know, $20, whatever it is in US dollars. But, serious amount of money just to physically own one recording of a few songs by a particular artist. Combine that with tours and with everything that was going into the music industry, and that was like at a peak where it just felt like, yeah, this isn't going to change, and people can invest careers, can invest time, can basically make this their thing. And to the extent where the actual musicians, the artists, the people involved could just almost live these like alternate like reality lifestyles where they were shielded from the realities and the mundanities of like, how do you get people to have a to recognize you as a person and your style? How do you get people to notice you? How do you get people to hear what you're doing? You had other people who could sort all of that out. Whereas now we're in an era where it's like there is no, you don't have the luxury as a musician of just saying, I just make the music and then I kind of upload it and then I just wait for the fame. It's just not, it's not realistic. It doesn't matter unless you've, obviously there's like Nepo babies who've got their contacts and whatever, and there are other methods, but genuinely for that kind of like idea of being able to be detach yourself from all of the things that are necessary, detach yourself from thinking about your visual imagery, for thinking about like how people perceive you, for thinking about even if your focus is music, you've got to think about like, okay, videos, any sort of visual artwork, anything associated with you, you got to be, kind of like in control of that. Think about that. Think about what you want to do, what do you want to put out there.
Right.
And that's like, that is so like wildly overwhelming as like a thing for someone to have to do. But you know what? If you really want to just kind of go from making some music in your bedroom with Ableton and whatever, and actually maybe make this into something which you can do all the time, then you just got to think about it all. You got to be ready, and you got to be like committed, and you just
willing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also, the other side of the coin. What is one of those things that have kept the artist community and even specific industries like even comedy together is a sense of community and collaboration. This idea of like different artists with different talents coming together, even comics. You get some good comedy duos sometimes, something that's very brass and then something that's very quirky, or weird, like just this random weird shit,
Yeah.
You put that together and you got a like great duo. You have a great set. Everybody's laughing. Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And it's not like one is taking away from the other. There's like kind of this thing of like, oh my God, like you're trying to steal my career away from me. Like,
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man. Like this is a hard industry. Like we got to work together.
Yeah.
To make like something work. I mean, that's just how I look at. That's how I kind of look at artistry at its core.
Yeah.
There's got to be a sense of community.
I think you're right. And I think that in the healthiest and best case scenarios, that is how it should and does work, But at the same time, like in the arts, just like with any situation where there's only a small, you got 1,000 like hungry people and all, they've all got to share one cake. And some people, they're going to take more than their one little slice, and they're going to fight for it, and they're going to do whatever they can to get that. Weird metaphor. But my point is that
I love
it. We're all fighting over the small chunks that come along, and there's always even people who, I don't know, like have that good mindset, that is like, look, I'm a good person, I'm a decent person, I try to help out where I can and all this sort of thing. But then some opportunity comes up and it was meant to go to two people, but like they decide, I don't know what, I'm going to stop with the hypothetical scenarios, but like then an opportunity comes up.
I get stuck in those too.
Yeah, right. Sometimes you just think they're going to come to you and it's just like, I got this.
But
it's
no.
But you got like, so something comes along, that's when you really find out like what someone's made of is like this opportunity, which is going to screw over someone else, or that other person maybe is, better situated for it, but they didn't find out about it. But you're just going to go, yeah, I can do that. It doesn't feel like the biggest deal in the world, but like, yeah, it's like fundamentally, it is a very solo activity. And, there's most people out there aren't there to kind of like be moral bastions of like the community, and they're there because they want to be successful, or they want to make this their living, and they want to be able to keep creating and creating and creating.
It's isn't it strange and how we as creatures, we have this obsession of creativity, and there's so much of it on this planet. There's all over, like from country to country, and regardless of all of the cons and all the problems that come with it, and the issues of how difficult it can be to make it as a career, people still do it, regardless of all the consequences.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we find a way. But also notice that when someone does make it, when you get some people who in the entertainment field of some sort, they've managed to find their place. Very rarely do they acknowledge the combination of like luck and hard work of whatever they have. It's all that they remember are the specific actions they took. And, you read these kind of like, or these biographies of someone, it's like, you too could be like me. You just need to do these exact things that I did that coincidentally worked for me because, I don't know, it just worked for me. That there's a combination of things. I mean, I'm not trying to like dismiss and say it's all luck and dismiss hard work, but I do think that it's easy to forget about the fact that it's like a combination of these things. I kind of, the way I see it is like the more hard work you do, the more luck you're kind of like feeding in. It's still a gamble. It's still so much as to chance, to other people, right place, right time. But when you put the hard work in, you're kind of like upping your stakes. You got more likelihood that it can work out. So it's one of those things that it's like, you should never sort of just forget about the fact that a lot of what you get can actually just come from being in the right place at the right time. I actually had a very, just one quick one. I had someone, I'm not going to say specific names because that would make me a genuine asshole. But I got recommended so someone I know, their partner is a musician who is doing quite well for themselves here in this country. And I found out that this comes from them happening to be on the label of and collaborating with quite a famous American artist, and I was quite like impressed when I heard who this was, and I was like, "Wow, that's."
Do you want to say the name of this artist?
I don't, because I feel like the combination of country and name of artist will actually make it very easy to Google exactly who I mean.
I got you.
But I was having this conversation and I was like, wow, that's, the genre of music. I was like, yeah, I'm into that. And I really like that. I'm really like fascinated. I was like, I didn't expect this. I didn't know, tell me more. And as the conversation went on, I was like, but you just got to tell me the one thing I hope you don't mind me asking, is like, how did he meet this famous American composer? And she was like, oh, yeah. So his family, like good friends with his family. So, yeah. And it was one of those moments that I almost wanted to go, oh, man, really? Oh, Jesus. But I was just like, oh, yeah, okay. But I mean, I'm talking about someone who is very well known and respected in the US. And because to me, it was just like such an unexpected, this is the Netherlands, unexpected collaboration, unexpected situation. I'm like, she was telling me the reason this conversation came up is because he'd been flown out to New York to attend a concert that was being held by the person who ran this label, not even to play at it. Yeah, and I was just like, okay, that's a life. But yeah, then that moment when you kind of like hear the Nepo link, and I was just like, oh man, really? Okay. It is what it is. Although, just one last disclaimer. One thing I did listen to the music, and the guy is good. Okay, I'm not taking it away. So this is what I'm talking about. He's good. So I don't feel like it's one of those situations where you're like, how did this happen? It's more about the fact that, like, look,
It makes
I
sense.
had the opportunity. It, it helped them. I'm pretty sure there's like lots of talented people who could make music like he does, but it's like, he is good. He made it. He's got that link. Good for him. But yeah, the world keeps spinning.
It's interesting because like we're talking about luck, right?
Yeah.
Luck can be almost superstitious because, it's like, what are you saying? That like just the draw of the cards or the roll of the dice. I think it's more of a way of like us interacting with the world around us, kind of a way of like being a part of the universe.
Yeah.
Where at times in your life, you run into certain paths based on the decision of your course, of which directions you've been going.
Yes.
And it happens to be sometimes that when you get into certain paths, you run into these situations that can be extremely beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's it. I completely agree. That's it. It's not luck in the sense of like, you rolled a 19, so now you get to have family. That's this of this composer. It's more about the fact that, like you say, it's you go along to a particular thing that you thought was inconsequential, but you had some spare time. You went along to it. While you're there, you met this particular person who, kind of said, hey, you should do this particular thing. I don't know. Like, again, damn, we're not good with the hypotheticals today. But the fact is that like the whole chain of events that happened from that happened because of that initial thing that was like, I don't know, a Sunday afternoon, and you were going to go to this this gig, this session, whatever it is. You weren't really feeling it, but as a result, all of these things happened afterwards. It's kind of, there's a sort of, I don't know, it's luck in the sense that the more you do, the more you kind of the more you just get out there, the hard work, I don't know, all these different things. The result is there's more chance that things just happen.
You touched on something which a lot of times gets misplaced, is the aspect specifically with hard work, right? How many times do you hear people talk about, you gotta, hard work, you gotta
right.
Really think for a second what you're telling the other person. And like reflect that back on yourself, because hard work is where you have to push yourself. You have to be here. You have to do this. Like, so you're being directional. You're putting yourself onto another person and expecting them to meet those same goals. Like, this is kind of the way where I'm just giving this as an example. Like when you deal with jobs, I can't stand jobs where you go on an interview and the number one thing that they're talking about is the opportunities. Okay. I don't give a flying fuck about your opportunities. I'm here to get a job. If it's a creative place, cool. If it's a great team, awesome.
Right.
Don't give me this shit about opportunities. Like, like if you work harder, and you move to this.
Yeah.
No.
that kind of, like dangling the carrot, but between you and the carrot there's like multiple steps, but it's just saying, look, eventually somewhere you might have this carrot. Ooh, imagine.
It's cruel.
I mean, not
Come
for
on,
the job.
It's cruel.
It's cruel.
It is. It's cruel.
Yeah, because it's not talking about the job that you're getting. It's not talking about the situation that you're actually talking about. It's this kind of like, I guess it's like the abusive version of what we were just talking about. It's kind of like saying, but then if you do this, these are the natural next steps that will probably happen, but we cannot guarantee this, and this is not what your life will be like. but this might happen. Imagine if it did. Focus on the good thing. Deal with the crap thing daily for long, hard hours, because one day that might turn into a good thing. Probably won't, but you never know. Opportunity. Yep. That's
pure segue into comedy. You can kind of take the same mentality and apply it with comedians, right? You know, where you could promise somebody from today until tomorrow, yeah, you're going to be a successful comic. Like you don't know. You really like. The number one person, like I can like Matt Rife. Okay, like his whole shtick is hot wives. Okay, that's his entire show is just hot wives, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But like you can clearly see as a comic, like he found his audience. He knows where he's supposed to put his comedy towards. That's not an easy thing you learn overnight.
Oh no. Yeah, you're right. The whole topic of persona, of who you are, is a huge and probably the most difficult and important thing as a comedian, I think. I mean, you get it. I think it's important in like a lot of aspects of art, but I do think that in comedy, it's like there's less scope for change. So, for example, if you get like a band who are known for, I don't know, say some sort of let's go for a bad example. They got this new metal band, right? And they've built their new metal fan base and like all that.
Okay, they're a Rammstein parody group.
Okay, you got this Rammstein parody group, but they're not German. They're from Sweden.
Oh my God.
They're
called Brumendan.
Brumendan. That's it, Brumendan. And they're not into pyrotechnics. They spray water everywhere. That's
my God.
thing.
Yes.
There's a Brumendan and their water theatrics. They've got this thing. They're now selling out stadiums, right? So Brumendan, all the way over to Gothenburg and Stockholm, everywhere. And suddenly they put out this, let's say, neoclassical, but with hints of like IDM infused album.
Okay.
Very chill sort of thing that could go on in the background of a cafe, and everyone would just sort of like
on the vinyl record player. Yeah.
That's it. Perfect.
There you
exactly.
Go.
And suddenly, a ton of their fans are like, what is this? I don't want anything to do with this. I'm done. But let's say, for example, that the thing that they did was actually magnificent. The new direction they went in, they did it like with such style and panache that it was like, not only did it bring in new people, but it also some of the people who were in the middle are like, I don't really like this, but they did it. And actually, suddenly I like this. I'm kind of into it. There's a lot more forgiveness for that sort of complete shift in persona and like direction and whatever it is. But in comedy, it's like if you've got someone who has a distinct persona that they've worked on, to the extent where even the words that they're using in their punchline actually be, part the tie-in with the persona that makes it funnier because they use those words, not because those words are the funny words, but this person or this persona they've created, when that person says it, that is hilarious. The way they pronounce it, or the fact that it's like, I don't know, some old guy who gets angry at the news, and then suddenly it's just like keeps using this particular term or getting other terms wrong, whatever it is. It all feeds into the persona. And that's something which not only have you got to build and work out like in the scope of your like true self, but you've also got to be able to like reproduce it. Like you got to be able to like stick with it, keep it consistent, work out funny things. Someone might be like writing material, and they might have some good material, but they're like, this just does not work with my persona. If I did material like this, I know it's good material, but people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, that's not him. No, and it's going to confuse them. They're going to be a bit like, I'm not so sure I'm into this anymore. But that they could go up and they just say like one or two things in their persona, not even jokes, not even something vaguely funny, but it's just like fits in with who they are. And their fan base are just going to be like, hell yeah, they're back. Yeah, the Swedish metal. That's the thing I think that is really like underrated and underestimated in what makes like a successful like comedian.
I don't think there's any other way of putting it. You really put it in a really great way, and it's kind of like, I wanted to use an example, an actual real life example, with, like, for example, with a band. Okay.
Yeah. Not a Swedish Rammstein cover band.
No, I was thinking of Joy Division, because when Ian Curtis, when he passed away, they decided to create something completely different, because they felt that they wanted to respect him and the work that they did with him. Hey, it's Dave, and I quickly just wanted to jump in and say, if you've been enjoying the podcast and enjoying this episode, if you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that'll be so greatly appreciated. Because here's the thing, someone might read that review and make the choice if they want to listen to the podcast. You get to help grow this podcast with us. How fucking cool is that? Let's jump back to today's episode. And what they basically did was they created new wave. You know, it was just a new prominence that, like, even now it's very enjoyable. It's very 80s, you know, obviously.
Yeah.
But that is something that if you tell a person or they hear it, you know, like that key word or key marker, it's forever stamped. Like, because they made those choices and it paid off in their benefit.
Yeah. That is a great example of a complete switch.
Amazing.
And New Order and Joy Division, you know, considering how influential and respected both of those artists are independently, is wild. I definitely think that you can't kind of, like you said, so they, due to this tragedy that basically fueled that situation, that's what caused the formation of New Order. They would have continued as Joy Division should Ian Curtis still be alive. And they, like you said, it was a powerful thing to do, to kind of like take such a different direction. But you wonder, would they have had that, say Joy Division had continued, and then they'd have had more of a synth-driven, like you say, new wave sound. Would people have been as forgiving if it was just still the same band, Joy Division, but now Joy Division go electric? Would they have had the same response? I'm not saying that, you know, the music could have been exactly just as powerful, just as profound, but it's just one of these things. I don't know. Like, it's a hypothetical.
Well, there is believe it or not, there is a real life example of this. You know, look at, for example, Queen. Okay, you know, again, nothing against the band members, and I've said this before.
Yeah,
Brian May and Roger Taylor, they've never accepted Freddie Mercury's death, and they've been trying to resurrect Queen ever since he died. And like, it's sad, because they're really incredible artists, a credible bass player, incredible drummer. I mean, these were really talented people, and they chose to continue Queen. Now, that's great. I mean, they've been doing good, but like, think of where they could have gone the direction the Joy Division did, where, you know what, Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon kind of came together. You know what, Freddie's gone. Let's figure out, maybe we want to do something different.
Yeah,
they might have made something successful. Yeah,
that's actually. I mean, that's a good example in the sense that it's, you know, the circumstances change through tragedy. I think the big difference between those two, though, is that the post Freddie Mercury incantations of Queen never, well, until recently, never actually tried to write new music.
No.
It was always trying to, you know, just accept the fact that the most popular material already existed. That's what people wanted to hear. So it never, like, whatever choice they had to go that way, whether it was because they enjoyed the fact that they were so popular. People loved those songs. They put their heart and soul into those songs, and they didn't want to lose that.
This
That's,
is
I think,
the real life.
right. But that's the big difference, I think, between that and, say, what New Order did. Because New Order, I suppose, technically could have done something like that. I mean, a bit different because Joy Division at that time didn't have that much former material, and also didn't have as much popularity as Queen did.
Also, the difference was, I think, with New Order was, I think this was in 82 or 83. They were one of the very first bands that used electronic equipment. So they had electronic drums, they had electronic synth, electronic keyboard, and they were very heavy on 808s. So
yeah,
in a way, they literally created a new genre of music. Like, that period in time created, I think, like 30 or 40 new genres that we use today.
Yeah.
And it's just like the sense of like just pure like creativity. It's like, oh, we got computers. Why don't we just put a board in a keyboard, electronic keyboard, and see what we can do? Like, oh, we have synthesizers. Why don't we just connect this into a power amp, and connect that to another motherboard, and then have relays and receptors so we can kind of change around the sounds. I like literally that period in time, there's so much history, but it just goes to show you like how much people were just, we got to try something new. Like, look at all the cool things that we have. Like, how do we make this work?
But that's also like you can never take away from the individuals who saw and tried that, because that's the big difference between like the Queen example and the New Order example, is that Queen, those remaining members, you talk about them very fondly and they're very competent and very creative musicians, but damn, they knew they had nothing else left. They were just like, look, this is the thing I do. Like, like coming back to what we were talking about earlier in the conversation, it's like, this is the thing I do. These are the people I hang out with. This is what I do with my days. And then on Tuesdays we have tacos. My goodness, I almost forgot. Whatever it is, they got their habits, they got their routines, they've got their way of working, and they want to keep going. It's like AC/DC or something like that now. It's just like, we know what you want, we're going to give it to you. Whereas New Order still had that spark of like, we are not done yet. We're not ready to just play these songs again and again. No, please, actually, please, let's never play these songs again. We got other things to do, other things to say. That's truly inspiring when someone's going through that sort of creativity.
Yeah, it really is, and it's really enjoyable not only to see, but like also to be able to watch. Like, you gave another great example, like AC/DC. They're in their 60s, okay? And he fucking gets on stage in little tidy shorts, and a little jacket, and he's like, yeah! And, like, that's I literally have all of AC/DC's albums on vinyl. I even have, like, the original Australian prints for the first 2 albums. Like, I'm, like, an insane.
Wow.
They're really fun. Like, it's just, no matter, like, in their 70s or 80s or 90s, like, they've always been AC/DC. Like, you don't describe them as rock or any. It's just AC/DC.
That's so true. It's amazing when you got it. Like, going back to the personas, they created one that is so specific, so niche that it's like, no, they're not rock, they're not heavy metal, they're not classic rock, because damn, they've been going. It's just AC/DC. It's just AC/DC or Akadaka, as they call them in Australia.
God.
And you know what? And that's it. Like, I'm not saying that one is valid and one is not. Like, it's not like, but New Order clearly were the better people or whatever it is. Because again, it comes down to like, what is important to you? Because like I also think that like myself, like a lot of people, kind of when you talk about the hypotheticals of someone who has that level of expectation and like reputation based on what they do, the weight of that has got to be so huge in terms of the stress involved in it, the, kind of, even if you're someone who doesn't pay attention to what people are saying about you, you kind of know, and you have to consciously decide how you deal with the positive and negative, even if you choose to ignore it. But that is there in everything that you do. And so, yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I'd love it if I was in this like really creative band for a while, and then we were like, we got our shit down. Should we just continue to tour the world for another few decades and just have fun and just play massive stadiums and just, and it'd be Sweden's greatest water-based metal band? Yeah, sure, let's do that.
It's the thing that keeps you alive. One of the things that I'm in my 20s, but it's like the number one thing I never want to run into. I never want to retire. I know that sounds crazy. Like, why? Why on earth would you want to retire? It's you get older, but if you love what you do, then why stop?
Yeah, for sure, man. But that's it. Like, if you love what you do, it's not really work, is it?
No.
Like, people always talk about money can't buy you happiness, but if you've got financial stability, then damn, and you just do the things that you want to do because you want to do them, then yeah, I feel like that's not going to buy you happiness, but it's going to give you a much better chance of getting there.
It gives you also like the ability where you work towards your future. Being able to be financially stable is not an easy feat and doesn't happen overnight. But with your creative pursuit and that intention in mind, and understanding that, look, there's a lot of aspects and there's a lot of goals that come into those things. But by the time that, you're in your 60s or in your 70s, you have something to like, look back at, and look forward to, and be inspired by. Honestly, that's like how I feel like the meaning and purpose of life, like religion and everything aside, isn't that like what life is worth living? That you can be at a point where you're like, you know what? I did a lot of shit that I shouldn't have done, right? We all do.
Yeah.
But at least I did the things that I wanted to some degree.
Yeah. It's an interesting one because I do agree with you, but there's also a part of me that's kind of like, does it matter?
No,
like,
not really.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's like there's a part of that thinking that inspires you to do things that are going to be stimulating and to not just get like I feel like that mentality is a really positive one to just live a fun and good and interesting life. But at the same time, it is the same sort of argument that someone who wants to have a statue built of them will have. It's like I don't care what I'm doing now. Look, we're going to put more babies on the fire, but you have to know that at one point I was good. I planted trees, but now fires and babies, that's it. This is just the life I live. This is the way I roll. So it's kind of, you just want to make sure you're still using it to motivate you to just do more and do good things rather than to motivate you to just kind of like feel like you need this sort of empire and legacy.
Right. But like at the same time, we've been talking about like musicians, specifically like some of these people, like they're in their 60s and 70s. And like, I'm going to throw another one out there. Like think of like Paul McCartney. Okay. He is probably the most successful artist that has ever stepped foot on earth. Okay.
Right.
He's worth so much money that I can't even say the numbers on this podcast because I don't even know where they start.
Yeah.
And he still works, and he's like in his late 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he doesn't give a flying fuck. He just wants to do what he wants to do.
That's true. No, that's a great example because he really does, Like, it's like whenever I hear it, even now, like, God, 80s, as you said, it's like you'll hear like a little interview with him, and he's talking about like he's talking about simultaneously about some TV show he's been watching, but then also about like smoking with someone at some like after party sort of thing. And you're just like, these are two human beings that coexist in their 80s in the year 2022, I think it was. I heard this thing, and I'm just like, what a way to be. Like, this guy is just, he's living his best life. he's got both the kind of like, yeah, I'm going to have an evening, watch the TV, and then I'm just going to go out and do something crazy and collaborate with someone who other people would kill to collaborate with. But I can, because I'm Paul McCartney. And, just give them a ring.
The crazy part about him is there is a statue of Paul McCartney. So technically,
of course there is. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, but the difference is, I guess, is I'm pretty sure that Paul McCartney didn't see that statue and go,
no.
I did it. It's done. All right, TV show till the end now. Done.
God.
All right.
No.
Wheel of Fortune.
Just kind of crazy thought. We're in a hypothetical world. Imagine if all 4 members of the Beatles were still alive today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And let's just say that they still broke up and they still had their solo careers.
Yeah.
How different that duo would have been compared to how they are now, because there's only 2 that are left.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is one of the great hypotheticals, right? I mean, did you see the Get Back documentary that came out a few years ago?
Oh my!
With
Rick Rubin. And
yeah.
Okay, I want to just clear something. Paul and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds not admitting that they were had a year of just psychedelics. There's literally a video of George Harrison talking about this in the 80s. They interviewed him and they asked about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and he literally responded we had an interesting trip with some stuff. And I was just like, oh boy, it's about a girl. Are you kidding me? That was just the only thing that I was kind of like.
I mean, honestly, that's got to. I mean, even with that though, what that made me think is just this thing of when you write a song and then you have time and distance between you and that song that you wrote, and then people keep asking you questions about that song or whatever it is, and people keep wanting specific meanings, and you've got to answer that same question 400 times, and you reach a point where you go, yeah, it was about a tree that I planted once.
Strawberry fields.
I killed afterwards.
Penny Lane.
About strawberries. About pennies in a lane. I'm sure you give the right answer sometimes, but sometimes you just go, I'm just, I'm tired. I'm tired of answering these questions.
Well, you're also dealing with a group that's from Liverpool. Something that I have a friend that's from Manchester, and it's one of those things I feel like more Americans should understand more about British culture, because primarily there is a part of Britain that is really the working class, where you're dealing with very much down to earth people that their family's been there, their family before them, they kind of have their little communities. People stay friends from young school all the way through their lives.
Yeah.
And you see that with a lot of groups that come out of England, specifically from Manchester and Liverpool and Blackpool and other Birmingham and other places that I can't even pronounce. But it just goes to show that not always do you need the most perfect situation and the most perfect equipment, and having the perfect foundation of family is always the things that you need to make it. You know what I mean? A lot of these people
absolutely.
were dirt poor.
It's absolutely. And it's I think that it's important, not to. I think it's not too important to get too hung up on these sorts of things in either direction.
Mm-hmm.
You get, on the one hand, you get people who sort of fetishize this, they came from working class backgrounds and they had this and everything was up against them, and you end up creating a story that sounds as heartfelt as an X Factor type of build-up story as someone's about to go into their audition, and that the reason it resonates so much is because it fits this beautiful narrative narrative, and it is what it is. And are you aware of the band The Last Dinner Party?
It sounds familiar. Let me
Right.
hold on. I'm dyslexic, so I have to see what you're telling me. It's called The Last Dinner.
The Last Dinner Party.
Okay.
So the reason I bring them up is because they're a British band whose debut album came out last month, and they got a lot of popularity incredibly quickly, and they came out of relatively nowhere. I think it was like their 5th ever gig. They supported the Rolling Stones, which is not the usual trajectory of a band.
No.
And so because of the speed at which everything happened, and because of the fact that, that situation happened, there was a lot of chat about, are these just a bunch of Nepo babies? Have they had privilege? Is there someone on the inside? This is a manufactured fake band, etc., etc., etc. And it didn't help the fact that they're all female. So as is the case with the music industry, there's a lot of misogyny. And so there's also the assumption it's like, oh, these women could not have done this by themselves. There must have been help. And so there was a lot of dialogue along this. And
and there isn't a problem with that. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with somebody getting help for their career.
Yeah. But this was what was interesting about this one, was that basically I kind of I was following it, and I was curious myself, even though, and I kind of liked the music. But what I found interesting was that what actually ended up happening was they got damn lucky. They were in the right place at the right time. They did get the right person to notice them at that right point. This kind of origin story, which most bands are killing themselves to kind of wish that sort of thing happens. And I think it was their second gig or someone very important was there and noticed them and saw the potential that they had, etc., etc. And then it exploded, and it exploded even more so because of the accusations and everything that came out of it. And then they eventually released their debut album. But this was it. It's people were so fascinated with the backstory, with the details, with how authentic they are, with what really matters, etc., etc. And it ended up thankfully actually giving them that extra publicity, because most of it was clear that they just were lucky and right place and right time. But when I say lucky, I mean they were good and lucky. And, so it's that combination. Well, but yeah, it's amazing how fascinated people were and were determined to basically be able to have that moment where they go, ha! Told you, like I said earlier, told you the family's family knew that person, and that was the reason. It's Just go on.
I mean, we've been, I was going to touch on the fact, we've been giving, honestly, really good examples. I mean, because the thing is, there's always different situations and different scenarios we run into. Like I was mentioning, with luck, it's the fact that people are on certain paths, and when you're on a certain path, you hit certain things along the way. And I feel that in many ways it comes back to, kind of coming back to yourself and being able to ask yourself, what do you want to do? How do you want to do this? How can you be the best version of yourself? Emphasizing on you, because that's where it starts. Yeah.
I mean, that's it. It's very easy to focus on others, to focus on everything else that's holding you back. If only I had X, Y, and Z that this other person had, then everything would have been easy, and then it would have been better for me. But it's just there is no comparison. There's no lessons to learn. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. Every time these things happen, you look back on it and you see patterns, and you see that was the perfect alignment. That was where the universe pushed them towards. That was good. But that particular combination, that's not going to work again. That exists now, so it can't work again. So now there needs to be something else, something new. And it's so you can either panic too much and think all about that, or you can just do what makes you happy and try to do it the best you can, and see what happens.
Try something different. Try something new.
Yeah, exactly.
Stephen, I was going to ask you, where can these wonderful people find your work, such as your comedy, your website, if you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, I've got webs. So I'm on YouTube. Oh man, all my usernames are so great for audio. On YouTube, it's MA0SM. On Instagram, same. On Facebook, Stephen Morgan Hero. TikTok, MA0SM. What else? Oh, there are others. It's all tiring. But yeah, I mean, I can give you some links. Maybe you can put them in the notes or something. But I'm all over the place. And if you're in the Netherlands, which is unlikely, but who knows, then you can also catch me, no doubt, playing around here every week or so. So yeah,
awesome.
But yeah, live your best life.
Mm-hmm. You got to. Listen, you get only one.
That's it then, in theory.
In theory. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. And for all y'all out there that want to check out more of the podcast, you can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Lost in the Groove Pod. So with that, we'll catch you on the next one. All right. Peace out. Peace out.